Good morning. Let me see. Are we all set up? Can everybody hear me? And can you see me? And where are my comments? A little different setup today. So I'm working on my computer. We're using cameras and mics and OBS and screens and all kinds of stuff going on here. So I'm just trying to make sure I got it all set up right. I think you can hear me. Get back to my YouTube over here. Good morning. I see a good morning comment. There's my comments right there. Okay. Good morning. All right. You guys ready for this? This is episode 1 of my Agronomy live series. So we're going to see how this goes, but my plan here is throughout the year when I have some really interesting but more in-depth agronomy knowledge or topic that I want to talk about, we'll do a live stream. We'll try and keep them to an hour or so, and we'll just see how it goes. So obviously it's the 1st of April today. It is cold and rainy. Actually, it's not super cold, but it is rainy. We had a little over 0.8 of an inch of rain overnight. Got super windy last night for a while and stuff. It's wet. We're not in the fields. We're not doing anything. There's not much agronomy-wise to go out and look at. So we're going to do some computer work stuff today. Once we get into fields and we're planting and we're doing stand evaluations, that kind of stuff, we can do some more of these. There'll be a little more interactive in the field kind of stuff that I will enjoy more. But all right, well, we're getting a few people on here, so we're going to get started here today. We'll go through this a couple of times probably because I know that the people that are watching now are generally not the people watching at the end of the live stream. So we'll go through it a couple of times, but what we're going to do is show you how I do some of my pre-plant planning stuff here on the computer. So we're going to go through making my management zones based on yield history and how I do that. My John Deere kind of does it all for me, but I'll show you how that works. We're gonna take those management zones, turn them into a corn prescription map, seeding rate prescription map, which I do things different than a lot of people probably, but I don't know if my way is the best way. It's just how I do it, and I take into account not only the field and the yield environment that we're in, but also the hybrid and the genetics that we're going to place on that field, because I don't think people give enough credit to the differences in genetics and what their populations should be. And so I try and incorporate that into my decision-making process here. We're going to talk about the starter fertilizer, both in furrow and the pop-up. We're going to talk about nitrogen and a side dress and why I variable rate, why it maybe doesn't make sense to variable rate, that kind of stuff. And then we'll go through a soybean seeding rate as well, and we'll see how long that takes. So that is the plan. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm just watching the comments that are right behind you guys there, and I see a lot of good mornings. Can see and hear fine, so seems like we're okay. 5 inches of snow. Good morning. All right, everybody. I will do my best to keep an eye on the comments, but I'm more focused on what we're doing here, so that's what we're gonna do. All right, let's go back to OBS and change my scene. Here we go. All right, so you guys can see this screen in front of me here, and you see this field right here. This is the one that we're going to work on first because this is the next one up for me in my corn prescription map creating process. So we're logged into the John Deere Operations Center, and it has maps of all of our fields and stuff. I can zoom out. You can see all the boundaries there. We'll zoom back in. You'll notice right here is the Ohio-Michigan state line. That's how close we are. It cuts a lot of our fields in half. We farm in both states. Okay. All right. So this one. Now this is not our best field. It's one of our better ones. Sorry, my camera's kind of off. Yeah, you guys aren't watching that anyway, right? So this one next to it is one of our absolute best fields. This is where we put some tile in last year. We put some tile in the back half of this one last year. It was wheat stubble. Had a good clover stand in it. We put chicken litter on it, and and now it is going to get planted to corn this spring. Okay, so we're going to click on this field, and what I want to do is come over here, and we're going to hit this field analyzer first because I'm going to show you how my management zones are being made. So that's going to take us to a new map. It's going to pull up some colorful maps. This one looks weird, right? Yeah, well, that's because it's a speed map from when we were running a ripper. That's totally pointless. Why we have that? I mean, I guess there's something to be learned from it, but what I want to show is this one. So we can pull up every year of corn data that we have on this field. It goes all the way back to 2007. These are the years that that field was corn. And we're going to throw all of them into this map, and it looks like this. Okay? That is 7 seasons, and it is averaging all of them and turning them into one conglomerate map. That pretty well creates management zones. You got your high yield areas and you got your low yield areas. And it's averaged over a long time, so no one map is having a ton of influence on it. That's good. Now, I question the validity and the accuracy of some of this older data, right? This stuff from 2007 and older stuff. Plus, we put a bunch of tile in this field this year. Now, that's not going to be reflected in any of the yield maps that we have in the past, but it will going forward. But what I like to do is stick to my 3 most recent years. So we're going to uncheck 2007, 9, 11, and 13. Okay? Now that brings our average yield for this field up a little bit. It was in the 170s. You take those, just the most 3 recent, we're up to 185. You take 2020 out, it goes up even more than that. But essentially, the field's getting better over time. Now, our management zones look pretty similar. We didn't change them a lot, just tweaked stuff a little bit here. So this is kind of the map we're going to work off of, but we're going to modify it a little bit. I just wanted you to see how it changes over time and how I'm coming up with where all that stuff is coming from. So let me get back to my stream over here because I can't see any comments right now. There we go. Mic volume is a little low. Oh, I can fix that. How's that? A little better? All right. I'll move it a little closer too. We'll try this. Have you done yield cleaning to get rid of those red streaks when turning around? That is not represented. You mean this stuff on the ends? I have not really. I've done some, especially this stuff right here. That's not representative. I just try and average them out mostly. You'll see they go away when we start working on this. So, all right, so we're going to go from here to a tool called Agrion Prescription Creator. Click this Connected Tools and click this, and I will show you the next step here. All right, so that pulls up this, and so we need to go through, and it already knows our field because it's the one we're working on. If we had just gone to Prescription Creator without having a field pulled up, then we would have to fill all this out, but we are in Borderview Farms. The farm is Farm 8, Cooks and Myers 8-2. It's the west one, the one on the east side of the creek is 8-1 east of the creek. Imagine that, right? Okay, field boundary. The last one I made was in 2019. That is our active boundary, so that's the one we're going to use. It is possible I take the gator over there, remap this field to have a boundary from 2023. We changed some boundaries with where some of the filter strips are along that ditch and stuff, so it probably needs to be done anyway. All right, and then we go down here to choose a layer, a prescription source. Now we have several options. We can use a soil survey that's going to use soil maps. I don't want to do that. The soil survey maps, while helpful and good, they're not accurate enough for the kind of information that we're trying to do here. We can use an existing script, something that I've done in the past. That's a good option. We can freeform. We can hand draw them, draw our zones however we want them. I could do that, but it would take me forever and be a cumbersome process. We can do a field operation. Anything that we have done in the past, we could use that speed layer from a tillage map for no reason whatsoever. But you can use an endless number there. What we're going to do is average yield. That's kind of what we were looking at. So we're going to tell it that. Now it's going to pull up all of those yield maps that we had in the past, and I'm going to check the first 3. Corn. We could do one for soybeans or wheat. We'll get to soybeans later, but we're going to do the last 3 years of corn. And then we choose a layer. And for some reason, you can do it based on the fuel burn rate of the combine, the elevation. There could be some merit to elevation maps. Harvest moisture could be some merit to that as far as where the higher productivity ground is generally higher moisture, not all. Yield. We're going to use yield. That's what we want. Okay? And then we hit next. And sometimes Agrion is a little slow, so we'll check out some comments while we're waiting here. It's the webcam. Sound is low. Okay, so could be much better. Okay, good. Glad the volume's good. All right, so this is going to zoom us in on our field here, and we've got this nice, pretty, colorful map, right? It's raining. John Deere or Agrion is really good at making pretty maps that don't mean anything, right? So they got 5 zones, 5 breaks, and their goal is to get them to be all about the same number of acres, roughly. You can see we're 17, 18, 17, 15.8, 10 in the red. So these breaks here at the bottom, they're just random. And it's random based on how do we get the prettiest map mostly. So I don't do that. I am using 3 zones this year. I have done 5 in the past, but I'm doing 3 this year. I'm trying to simplify it a little bit. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not. It's just how I'm doing it. So we're going to change that to 3, and it's going to make it 3 zones instead of 5, but still kind of trying to keep the acres even-ish and random breaks. So right now, anything 179.4 is in the orange, 193 and above is in the green, and the yellow is anything in between. Again, those numbers are random. They don't mean anything to me, other than the average is somewhere in between there. What I'm doing is we're going to type in 150 as our low zone, and we're going to do 200 as our high zone. So now this has got 3 years of yield data, the last 3 years that we've had corn in there, and it is averaging all of those maps together to create these zones. And we don't have near as much variation. It's not as pretty of a map here, right? But this gives me something that I can work with. So the yellow areas are our average. That is somewhere between 150 and 200 bushel average yield over the course of however long, or over the course of the last 3 years. We've got the orange up here. It's mostly just the trees in the red areas. And then our really highly productive areas, the areas that we can push this field, are the green. Okay? I like this map. Different fields are going to look totally different. This field over here was mostly green. Very, very little yellow in it because it's just a better farm, better soil types, that lays better, higher productivity. Okay. I'm going to move you guys out of the way a little bit here. All right. So we need to create a prescription map, and we're going to add a variety. It's going to ask me, what variety do you want to add? Crap, what variety do I have there? All right, so we need to go somewhere else. So we're going to click up here on my spreadsheet. This is my planting outline spreadsheet. We are on field 8-1, west of the creek. There's 79 acres, corn. These are the 2 hybrids that we are going to plant there, G11V76 and G10L16. Okay, we're going to start with the 11V76. So we'll go back to Agrion, and we will find, where is it? 11V76, right there. Okay, and we're going to get rid of this span area because we don't need that. So now we need to give it our values. What seeding rate do we want in all of those different zones? Well, we have another step in here, okay? So I need to know what seeding rates for this hybrid wants in different yield environments. Golden Harvest provides us that information. So we're going to go up to the top here again. We're going to click on goldenharvestseeds.com tab I had open. And if I go to the Services and Tools button, and then we scroll down, there is a corn seeding rate calculator. We're going to open this up. It's going to need a little bit of information as it loads here, and then it'll give us a nice graph. So first thing, select a hybrid. So we need our correct hybrid, 11V76. Okay. Price of grain. What's the price of grain going to be this fall, guys? I've been using 550. That's starting to look a little optimistic. Price has gone down, but that's what I've been using, so we're going to keep using that. Okay, so that's our expected price per bushel of the grain that we're going to harvest this fall. The other thing it needs is to know a seed cost, and as much as I don't really want to show you what my seed costs are, for the purposes of being thorough, we're going to do that. So I come back to my spreadsheet, my Excel spreadsheet, and I have another tab at the bottom here that is Hybrids and Varieties List. 11V76, my cost $256. Okay, so we'll go back here, not there, here, and we're going to put that in. We're just going to say 255. Close enough. Now it's going to update our line. All right, so here's our line. So in that 150 yield environment right down here at the bottom, it says our optimum seeding rate is 28,823 seeds per acre. Okay, 28,823. We're going to round that to 29,000. Close enough. So we'll go back over to Agrion, and in here we're going to write 29,000. Now you will notice that's only 2.9 acres, and it's only along the trees. This is where we're saving some cost. We're not going to plant as many seeds there because it's not going to grow anyway, and it's not the fault of the ground being crappy. It's the fault that there's trees there and there's wildlife damage, and it just doesn't have that kind of potential. So we're saving some money there. All right, now the bulk of the field where this is, you know, the majority of it. Now the average here is 150 to 200. I like to push things. So we're going to push it to all of that zone being in the 200 range. So what is our optimum at 200 is 31,577. We're just going to round that to 31,600. This hybrid's got a little flex to it. We don't have to push it real hard. 31,600. Golden Harvest is telling me that that is enough to get this hybrid to yield 200 bushel an acre. No problem. Okay. All right, so now our productive area. So we're 200 plus, but we kind of been working in 50 bushel increments. Let's push it. Let's go to 250. I want this green area to yield 250. How do we get it there? Keep clicking the wrong tab. We'll go over here. 34,332. We're going to call it 34,500. 34,500. Okay, so those are our seeding rates. Now it'll tell you me a total number of seeds applied there in the field based on the acres and the how many is in each zone. Our amount per bag is 80,000. So we're going to need 31.553 bags. Now, just for my own purposes, I like to keep a little bit better track of stuff. And the one thing that Agrian doesn't do that I wish it did is tell me what the average per acre is across the whole field. It doesn't give me that information. But I can figure that out. So we take the 2,524,279 and we divide that by how many acres are in the field, which if we go back to my spreadsheet here, we know is 79.1 divided by 79.1. My handy dandy calculator. Except for I screwed it up. Dang it. Let's try this again. Here, I'll do it on the screen so you guys can watch. 2, 5, 2, 4, 2, 7, 9 divided by, was it 79.1? $79.1. 31,912 is our average. So we'll go back to our spreadsheet and we're going to write that in here. 31,912. So you'll see that that's a little lower than the 32 that I just put in there as kind of a placeholder. This is the number of bags that we're going to need, this 31.6 here. It's going to change very slightly. Nope, it didn't even change. Not even enough. Dropping it 88 seeds per acre wasn't enough to change it. Okay. So here's the thing though, I only have 20 bags of 11V76 allocated to that field, which means we're going to be short. That's why I have a second hybrid here, some 10L16. Now, I could use this one seeding rate, come on, across all of that, or we can just make another one. We can just hit add variety here. We can go 10L16, and we can put new hybrids in here, and then when I switch hybrids in the planter, all I have to do is go in and select a different script, and it will plant it based on that hybrid. That's why I don't make scripts solid, you know, I'm tailoring it to the hybrid. Now these probably aren't going to be a ton different because 10L16 is also a flexier hybrid that's low, but there are other ones that, like I have a 108-day corn that in the 250 zone, it would tell me to plant 39,000. Pushing a little bit if you ask me, but is what it is. So, all right, so we're going to come back over here. We're going to go to this hybrid and varieties list, 10L. 10L was a little more expensive at 271. Okay. Let's go to our seeding rate calculator. Let's 10L. We're going to leave the price of grain the same. We're going to move the cost of the corn up. Okay. 150. Optimum yield environment or population rate 30,000. 30,000 even. Okay. So it's a little different. Not a ton different, but it's a little different. 200. 31,922. We'll just call it 32,000. Okay. And at 250, we're at 33,766. We'll call it 33,800. Come on. No, that's not what we want. Not 38,000, 33. There we go. Amount per bag, again, 80,000. Now our total applied, it's going to be similar. I'm not going to worry about changing that number again. We'll just go with it with what the majority of the field is on that other one. So, all right, so that is how we make our seed prescriptions. Do we have any questions? Any questions? We don't have any questions. All right, good deal. Do we have any people watching? 117. Well, that's not so bad. Okay, so we're going to go from there to, now we're going to talk about fertilizer. And what do we, so with our starter, I have the capability of variable rating my starter. We're going to use this same exact map. We're going to do this. We'll go back to my spreadsheet here, and I have another one for corn starter and anhydrous plan. We're working in this same field, and we're going to start with our 2x2x2 and see. Let's go. Yep. That is a tank mix. Okay, so we're going to click add tank mix. We're going to go clear down to the bottom here, 2x2x2 starter. And this one, we're doing the same, my zones are the same across every field. It doesn't matter. It's not like a hybrid where it's different. We're using the same product and everything. So my rates are the same, and I've kind of just, let me pull up another sheet here. This one is where I kind of figured out all of that stuff. So here, this box is my 2x2x2 starter. This is my blend on my standard rate, which is 15 gallons to the acre. It's 3 gallons of 1034O, 5 gallons of ATS, ammonium thiosulfate, 6.75 of 28002, and then we're putting in a quart of a product called Carbo Zinc. It's a zinc product that we're adding. Okay. And so in my yield zone of 150 to 200, we're going to put 15 gallons to the acre on it. And this tells you how much nutrients we're getting out of that: 30 pounds of nitrogen, 12 pounds of P2O5, 15 pounds of sulfur, a little bit of zinc, and what my cost is on that. And then these are the rates that we're going to use in my other zones. So we're just going 2.5 gallon increments. So 12.5, 15, 17.5. Okay, makes sense. 12.5. 15, 17.5. Now that tells me the total applied, so we'll take that 1206 divided by 79.1 gives me an average. There we go. So yes, we have a script. Our average is now 15.25. And it updates how many gallons that we need total. That 1206 matches. And then it tells me how much 1034O, how much ATS, how much 28, how much zinc I need to add to the tank when we go to that field to do it. It's currently hailing, so that's fun. All right. Going back to some of the questions. Low population for the guy that sells seed. Yeah, I mean, I'm tailoring it to the field, right? It's not, or to the hybrid. I'm not trying to just sell seed, but yeah, you're right. It's kind of unusual. When you change the seed in the monitor, it knows to switch scripts, or you have to manually do that. I'm pretty sure I have to manually change the script. It's not going to know that automatically. How does it decide where to plant each hybrid? I have done that. So this spreadsheet, I have already gone through and assigned the hybrids to which field I want to plant them, and that's just my personal knowledge of what hybrids will work good in what situation, maturities, that kind of stuff. So that's how we're figuring all of that out. All right, so we've got this 2x2 starter figured out here. We're going to add another tank mix for our in-furrow. And we're going to go back to that spreadsheet. I'll show you this again. So we're doing the same thing with in-furrow. Here's the box for that. We're using 4, 5, and 6 as our rates. Our analysis here, we've got a product that's a 7-21-3, 7% nitrogen, 21% phosphorus, P, and 3% potassium. It is a monopotassium phosphate, the NPK there. And then corn spike, which is a zinc product. And then a product called Carbon RX, which has got some humic acids, amino acids, that kind of stuff in there. So, and then this is the analysis. Again, we're getting another little over 3 pounds of nitrogen, 10 pounds of P2O5. That's the important one in furrow. So that phosphorus right there on the seed. A little bit of potassium, tiny amount of boron, some sugar, some zinc, some humic acid at that cost. Okay, so we'll go back here and type in our 4, 5, and 6. Now, the reason I'm varying the fertilizer rate is because the higher zones need more fertility. And the higher zones are removing more fertility. The lower yielding zones are removing less, so we don't need to put as much on there. It's not necessarily lower yielding because the fertility is bad. It's lower yielding for other reasons, in this case, trees. And so that's why I do this variable rate on the fertilizer as well, because I feel like we need to give more to where we're really trying to push these yields. Okay, so we're going to use 403 gallons of our pop-up divided by 79.1 is an average of 5.1, we'll call it, per acre. So what that tells me, type this in, yes, 5.1. When we're above 5, above my normal, my standard, whether it's 15 on this one or 5 over here, that field is above average. When we're below that, it's a below average field. So like there's some 4.9s here. Those fields are not quite as good, basically, overall. All right, so last one we need to do before we save this is anhydrous, nitrogen. So because I'm variable rating my starter, we also are putting on different amounts of nitrogen on all of those zones. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. But 8200, it's a straight fertilizer here. We're using the same zones. And when you go back to my spreadsheet here and look at this starter, so now we'll scroll over and we'll look at this combined. So this is adding all the nutrients from the in-furrow and the 2x2 together, okay? And we're just going to focus on this middle column where it's my middle zone, standard rates. But we're getting 33 pounds of N, 22 pounds of P2O5, some 15 pounds of sulfur, all of this good stuff. So now we're shooting for 200 bushel corn there. General rule of thumb is you need 1 pound of nitrogen per 1 bushel of corn that you want to produce. So if we want 200, we need to take this 33 pounds of N, 34 really, and we need to add enough to it to get to 200. Well, that's where our 165 comes into play. So we're going to add 165 pounds of nitrogen through our side dress. That gets us up to 198.9. That's close enough. Over here in our 150, we're only putting 28 pounds on early, but to get to 150, we only need to add about 120. And then in the 200, we're putting actually 40 pounds of N on in our high productive zones with the planter. We're going to add 180 there. We're only putting enough nitrogen on for 220. Nitrogen is expensive. I've debated on this one a lot. I decided not to go all the way up to 250 pounds of N. And there's another factor to this. So I told you when we started we were going to talk about why variable rate nitrogen makes sense. This is why it makes sense, because I'm putting different amounts on, trying to push it to the yield zone, right? I'm trying to produce as much, I'm trying to put on enough nitrogen to produce as much as each zone is capable of producing. Here's why variable rate nitrogen doesn't make sense. We get nitrogen out of our soil organic matter. Kind of the microbes and the biology of our soil is breaking down organic matter. It's releasing nitrogen that's been tied up in that residue from previous crops and making it available to our crops, especially in a field like this one where we put chicken litter on it last fall. It is breaking that organic matter in that chicken litter down, providing nitrogen to our crops, okay? Generally, and I won't say always, but generally our high yielding zones are our higher organic matter zones. And so if you look at a soil test, it will kind of give you an estimated nitrogen release based on the amount of organic matter. And the higher the organic matter, the more nitrogen that soil is going to provide. And so I've taken the approach that while I do want to push my high yield zone in areas, I am going to back off and not go a 1-to-1 nitrogen to yield goal ratio in those zones, because I'm going to count on that soil to produce enough nitrogen to carry me through there. So part of it is me being cheap and not wanting to put 250 pounds of nitrogen out there. Part of it is that agronomically this does make sense that your higher yielding zones are going to provide more nitrogen to that crop naturally. Your lower yielding zones are going to provide less. That would argue that you should put a flat straight rate of nitrogen on. I'm kind of meeting in the middle. We're not doing a flat rate, but we're not varying it as much as the logic would tell me to. So anyway, we'll get our numbers put in here. 120, 165, and 180. So that means we're going to use 13,086 pounds of N divided by 79.1 is a rate of 165.4 average. We'll come back over to our spreadsheet here. Not this page. this page. Yes, we have a script. Average is 165. Yeah, 165.4 is close enough. And then that tells me how much I need for the rest of the field. Questions? All right, so let's go back. I'll read them in a second here. And hit save. So that's how we do a field. And we're just going to hit save and close for now. We'll come back and do another one in a little bit. But there. All right, what do we got for questions? Just rain on the west side of Michigan. Nathan, when working on your nutrient applications, do you work off of if X amount of N is applied, X amount of P and K is... if X amount of N is applied, X amount of P and K is used by the plant. Well, not exactly. So I'm working off of yield zones, and if you guys farm and you're interested in this stuff, download the Ag PhD's nutrient removal app on your phone. I kind of look at that and see how much nutrients my corn needs at different yield levels, and try and shoot for putting on those amounts of nutrients. So I'm not varying the P and K based off of the N. I'm varying it based off of how much I need to produce 200 bushel corn in my normal zones or 250 in my other zones, kind of thing. And you know, all of this stuff is going to vary depending on your farm. You're going to have different yield zones. You're going to have different nutrient needs. You're going to have this works for my situation. I'm not saying it works anywhere else, but you'll notice that those files that we just created are all here now, and we can we can create some plans from there. We'll get to that in a minute. But there is our map. So all right, well let's get to that. 3 inches of rain last 36 hours in southwestern Ontario. Ouch. What percent of the litter N do you take for credit each in the first year? Good question, right? So let me pull out. Is it in here? Yeah, right here. So I have this sheet here. This has our analysis of our chicken litter on it. And it is total nitrogen in 1 ton, it's 40 pounds. 13 of that is ammonium nitrogen that we basically figure is gone. It's gassed off before we ever even get it incorporated into the ground. We're not going to get any use out of that. 26 pounds of that is organic nitrogen. So we're putting on 2 tons generally. So that means we've got a little over 50 pounds of organic nitrogen that should be available to our corn crop. Now, how much of that is breaking down in the first year? I don't know. Tough to say. Well, it does say, actually. It's not tough to say. It says it right on the paper. First year availability is 15.8, basically 16 of that 26. So figure 32 pounds of N available. And 2 years ago, we did a test with our crop consultant company. You may remember where we've done some of these nitrogen stabilizer plots where we put full rates of nitrogen on, 75% rates of nitrogen with and without a stabilizer. And they pull stalk nitrates tests in the fall to see how much nitrate is left in that plant. And the overall glaring theme that year was that we had way more nitrogen available than we needed. We were seeing stock nitrate test levels of 2, 3, 4,000 parts per million when most other places they were doing these were in the 2 to 300 range or less. And so I attributed that to the chicken litter being there from the year before, and I had never given it much of an N credit, but turns out there was quite a bit of nitrogen there. Now we had fantastic corn. I mean, that year we had corn push over 220 bushel in that field. It was awesome. And I think that having all that chicken litter and nitrogen there was part of that. But last year, with the price of nitrogen being 3 times what it was the year before, I backed off. And especially where we put that chicken litter, we could reduce our N by 25%, I think. And it didn't really cost us any yield because we had plenty available. So that's what I've done there. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not, but that's how we've done it. How much N through the conceal system? Yeah, so through the 2x2 system, we're putting down about 30 pounds. Somewhere between 25 and 35 pounds of N. All right, so that is how we're doing the corn side of stuff. You guys want to go through a soybean plant seeding rate one? I haven't done any yet, but doesn't mean we can't. Let me get you back over to where you can see my screen. Okay, so we're back over here. This is the cornfield that we just did. Actually, before we do a soybean one, before we do that, we're gonna jump back and I'm gonna walk you through work planner real quick. Come on. Can additional N compensate for low OM? Why is lower OM in most of the field? 0.7 pound. Yeah, Eric, N is very tough to figure out. I raised some corn last year that we did it on 0.6 or less pounds of N per bushel. It was phenomenal, but I don't count on that. So I'm always trying to push things. My worst fear is to short my crop nitrogen, especially when nitrogen is reasonably priced. So I'm pushing it. I'm pushing things. It's one of those, you prepare for the worst case scenario, but you plan for the best kind of thing, where if we have good weather, I have to have the nitrogen there. Otherwise, our yields are going to suffer. So we're going to push things. Anyway, can additional N compensate for low organic matter? Well, it can, from the sense of providing that nitrogen. Organic matter does a lot more than just provide nitrogen to the crop, though. So yes and no, I guess. And why is low organic matter in most of the fields? Well, I wouldn't say it's in most of the fields, but the organic matter generally collects where the plant material grows best. And that is almost entirely based on topography in our area. Look at this field right next to the one. This is not our field, but look at the color of the soil. You can see how much it changes. That black ground, that's the low ground. That's where the water lays. That's where all the topsoil's eroded to over years. You know, all of those dark streaks, that's the high organic matter stuff. This is a clay knob here. That's not going to yield very well. Our field's a little harder to see because this was clover, wheat stubble, when this picture was taken. Let's see. But you can see it in some of these other fields, you know, where all the dark is. Look at this one. That's all the high organic matter. Those are the highly productive areas. You could make these maps based on color of the ground if you wanted to. That's, you know, where you wanted to free draw them out by hand and just trace around the black areas. You'd have a great map. Anyway, we're going to move on to, what are we doing? Oh yeah, work planner. All right, let's go back up here. So now we need to get those prescription maps to our tractor, and John Deere makes a really cool tool here called Work Planner. And I'm not actually going to do this. I'll just go through the process to the point where you submit it. But we can open this up. I'm going to learn it with you a little bit because I've done it, but it's been a while. All right. We feel the second year N release from litter is contributing factor for white mold, though. Thoughts? I haven't considered that. I suppose it's possible. But I also think that it's making our beans yield really well because our beans following litter 2 years later are still pretty darn good. So, yeah, it's possible. Do you do any late spring nitrogen test? I did last year in some of that ground where we had done chicken litter and stuff. I don't know that I'll continue to do that. It showed me something, but not a ton. I didn't change a lot based on that. So, if I recall correctly, could have used more nitrogen in your irrigated field last year. Yeah, I could have. But keep in mind the yield levels we were pushing. You know, we're pushing 260, 280, 300 bushel corn up there, and I didn't put 300 pounds of nitrogen on. I put 220, 230 on with the planter and the side dress, and then we put some on through the water. You know, some of it may have gotten 250, but not all of it. And yeah, we ran out. I didn't put enough on. So anyway, work planner. So we're going to do 2023 seeding work planner, and we're going to hit this plan seeding. Okay, we're going to go to our field that's 8-2. We're going to click that one. And we're just going to do that one. You can do multiples at a time if you want. Oh, no, I got 8-1. Go back. Can't see because my camera's in the way there. 8-2. Next. Okay, so this brings up the field. The blue lines are my guidance lines. They're my auto track lines. Select a crop. It is going to be corn. Select a variety. We already know this because we just made the script. It is mostly 11V76. And so then we can click this RX button here, and we can find that RX for the 11V76. Sometimes my mouse doesn't like to work very good. Okay, and then that pulls it up. That's the script that we just made. Looks about right. We're going to hit select additional variety because we know we have a second variety going into this field, 10L16. And we're going to hit the script for that. If you didn't have scripts and you wanted to just assign a straight seeding rate, you could do that by hybrid here. It would remember it. And now that I'm going through this, it might actually pull up the map, the prescription map for the variety when you change varieties based on this work planner thing. So I kind of forgot that it did that by hybrid. So and then we're going to go product or tank mix. And we're going to go with our tank mix, our 2x2 starter. Pull up our script for that, and they all look the same. The only thing that's changing is the scale up here. Another one, because we have two. Clear down at the bottom. In furrow. In furrow. And then you can include all guidance lines or not. We don't really need this soybean one because we're not going to plant on an angle. The main one is the big one. And in fact, we're going to star that. That's the one that it will start on. So that's the main line on the west side of the field here. Machine. 8RX. Implement. I can't see. My camera's in the way. 1775 NT. Did I get that? Yep. Operator. That'd be me. And then we can hit save. And it will, I don't know if it will do it from there, but it'll eventually send that to the machine. So when I pull into the field with the 8RX, the GPS is going to say, hey, you're in this field. We have this work plan to do it. Is this what you want to do? Yes or no? You click yes, make sure everything matches up, and you go to work. And it's just done. I don't have to worry about trying to go through that list and find that script and load everything. It's just done. And it's awesome. So that's how we do that. All right, let's go. We're gonna cancel out of here because I don't want to save that. I'm gonna set all this stuff up when I get all of them done. But we'll go back to our map. Let's do a soybean one. Okay, so we need a soybean field. Let's go to our script here, our Excel spreadsheet. We're gonna decheck corn, check soybeans. It's gonna change my field list. I have not made any scripts yet for soybeans, so we're going to start with the first one. No, that's not the first one. This one, 2-1. Okay, 2-1 is this field right here. Okay. We'll go back into Field Analyzer. I'll show you the zones for soybeans on this one, or what the yield history is on this one. This one's got an interesting thing. This one does have some interesting stuff. Scroll up. Soybeans. So we have 5 seasons of soybeans here, but we didn't farm this whole piece as one thing back in 2009 or 12 for that matter. So that's going to skew things. This might look a little different here. Yeah. How many more maps to do? I don't know. I got probably 15 corn ones to do, plus all the bean ones. I can go through these a lot faster than what I'm doing with you guys, but yeah. All right, you see how there's kind of a defined line right here? It's because we used to only farm part of this here and not the rest of this. So let's take out 2009, 2012. So this is just our last 3 years of beans here, 15, 18, and 21. Let's see what that looks like. The average for those 3 years, 61.4. That's pretty good. Yeah, definitely something going on up in this corner. It's not as good back there. It could have been a variety issue one year, which is where this using yield history kind of falls apart a little bit. There's an old fence row here that's causing this streak, I think. We've got trees over here, obviously. Trees along the edges. Yeah. what happens if I take 15 out? Sometimes I just play with them a little bit to see what it looks like with and without additional years. Nah, that didn't solve it. Let's go back to take 18 out. Well, that didn't really solve it either. So this side up here is just not as productive. It's not as good. Could be a soil test issue. We need to figure that out. We'll have to do some investigating in that one. But we're going to go with it with 3 years. So we'll go back over to Agronomy, to our prescription creator. Beans are different than corn. So in corn, we're trying to really push the high yield zones, right? And in, not that we're not trying to push the high yield zones in beans, but by doing the way you do that in corn is different. In corn, you need pot plants. It's all about harvestable ears. So you need more plants per acre in order to push the yields. And so we really crank up those populations on corn in the high yield zones. Beans are the total opposite. Total opposite. We want to lower populations. I'll explain in a minute. So, all right, so we're back in Agronomy, our prescription creator through my John Deere. We've got all that field stuff filled out. We're going to hit average yield again. It's going to pull up that list eventually. It's a little slow sometimes. Okay, we don't want corn this time, though. We want soybeans because we're making a soybean map. We're going to use our last 3 years of soybean data, harvest yield, and hit next. How much does it change depending on dry land or irrigated? Some, but here's the thing. After I've gotten 2-3 years of irrigated data into my maps, it should be reflected in the yield zones, right? So I should have a lot more in that 200 to 250 yield zone, and I may skew them even higher, and then I'm going back to my seeding rate calculator and I'm using it for the yield zones. So does it change it? Yes. It makes everything in a higher yield zone, but it's the same process. All right, so here's our nice pretty map. Again, we only want 3 zones. We do a high, a low, and a mid. What are my rates going to be? We'll figure that out. Soybeans are not as responsive to population by variety as corn is by hybrid. So we don't vary it based on the variety. We just do it based on the yield zone. And what are my yield zones going to be? So this field has zones yields anywhere from 21 to 71. If I do 50 and 60, what does our map look like? I'm guessing the 50 is getting pretty low. There won't be very much of that. Yeah, just the very corners. If I do 55 and 60, what does that look like? A lot of green. A little more red. I'm okay with that. What if we go up to 65 here? This is just this is a guess more than anything. We're just figuring it out as we go. All right. I kind of like that one better. Yeah, I think we're going to go with this. Okay, add a variety. Oh, we need to know what variety we're planting here. G, 3043, GH, 4030, 3043 E3. That's a 3.0 bean. We do not have a seeding rate calculator for this, so we don't need to do that. We need to find it. 43 right there. So in our low zones, instead of cutting back and trying to save seed there, we actually need to push those. We need to plant more plants there in order to compensate for the fact that they're not going to grow very well. Soybeans is all about nodes per acre and sunlight capture. And if your beans are going to be stunted, they're not going to grow very good, they're not going to put a lot of nodes on. You got to have more plants there so you have more nodes to push those. So let's plant 180,000 there. 180,000. Now in our average zones, typically our average has been around 160,000, 15-inch rows with a planter. I really think we can drop that some. I don't know if I'm willing to go all the way down to 140,000. But I think, especially in this field, I think we're going to go 150. And then in our productive ground, I know we can drop them. I've done some seeding rate trials in my plots in 30-inch rows down to 60,000 and had pretty decent luck doing it. 100,000 is not a problem at all. So let's do 130,000. That's dropping it, but it's not drastic. Okay. Amount per bag on beans is 140,000. So that means we need about 90 bags to plant this field. What's our average is going to be that 12,481,591 divided by, how many acres do we have here? 84.1. Come on. 84.1. 148,413 seeds per acre. 148,314, is that what I said? 413. Okay. That's how we do it for beans. And we don't have any other products we're putting on there. We're not doing any starter. We're not doing any fertilizer stuff. So we don't have to go through a bunch of them. So we just hit save. Save and close. Now we don't have the ability to send this to a Gen 4 display. Use the work planner on the bean planter tractor because we're using the 8R. It's got a 2630 monitor, which I can send it to wirelessly, but it's not as user friendly. Doesn't work quite as well. So, all right, what else do you guys want to know? What else can I show you on the computer here, the planning process and setup process that you would be interested in? We're almost an hour into this. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here pretty soon. I don't know if this was as interesting as I had hoped it was going to be, but that's okay. With soybeans, do you cut rates on sandy spots? I know you're supposed to cut pops in high-yielding spots and push it up in the low-yielding spots, but that seems wrong when water is the limiting factor. Well, for me, sandy spots are the low-yielding spots. If water's the limiting factor, yeah. So do you cut the pops there? You got to keep in mind it's your plants are still struggling, and it's all about nodes. So I would say no. I would not cut my plants there. I would still push it, but we don't have a ton of sand like a lot of areas do. I can see where you would want to do that. That does make sense, but yeah. I joined late, but how do you apply sulfur in both corn and soybeans, and how much do you variable rate it? Yeah, so in corn, sulfur. Let's talk about sulfur. Sulfur has become incredibly important for us as we've cleaned up the environment, to be honest. It's when the Clean Air Act passed back in the 80s, it took a long time to get implemented, and then President Obama did some stuff in the early 2010s that cleaned some of the factories and sulfur emissions up even more, and we don't get it in the rain anymore. We used to get free sulfur in the rain, and it was great, and we don't anymore. And that's good for most of the environment. It's not for crop production because now we have to buy sulfur. And the tricky thing with that is how do you get it put on? You can buy elemental sulfur and broadcast that basically as a powder or a granular in the fall. Elemental sulfur, however, takes a long time to break down. The microbes and the biology in the soil have to take that sulfur, break it down into a sulfate form that the plants can then use. Plants cannot take elemental sulfur up. It has to be in a sulfate form, okay? We have no control over that process and how long it takes. I could spread sulfur in the fall in elemental and it wouldn't be available for my crop the next year. You just have no control over that. So we have to go to a sulfate form. We do spread some AMS, dry AMS, with our potash in the fall to get some of that sulfate form of sulfur out there. Problem with sulfate sulfur is it's leachable. It moves with water, much like nitrogen. So you can't put it out too early. You can't just build those levels in the soil over time. So that's not a great option. We do some of that, but it's not a great option. So in corn, we can apply liquid sulfur in the form of ATS, ammonium thiosulfate, that is 26% sulfur. And so I'm doing that with my corn planter. I've been doing that for several years. I am putting, on average, 5 gallons to the acre of ATS on with my corn planter. That is heavily front-loading it. I would much rather space that out and put it on throughout the season. I did that with the irrigation last year. We put ATS in through the irrigation water. I feel like that works really well to get that sulfur out there. You're getting some nitrogen with it. Ideally, I would put it on at sidedress time. I have no way to do that. Not with anhydrous. Because I'm using a gas, it's not a liquid. If we were side dressing with 28, I could put ATS in with the 28, blend them together, put it on that way. I don't have that capability. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm putting it on early. I am variable rating it with the starter, just like everything else. So essentially in my, where I'm putting 5 gallons on in the normal zones, I'm reducing that by, I don't even know what it is exactly, a gallon or two. Here, I can pull up this sheet again. Let's go starter. So in my 2x2, so in my normal zones, we're getting 15.7 pounds of sulfur. In my low yield zones, I'm only putting 13 on. In my high, we're putting about 18.5 on. That's how I'm variable rating my sulfur. I'm also doing some stuff with some foliar feed spray products. So there is other ways to get sulfur on. Foliars are expensive, but they're effective. So I'm working with this Ag Explorer. And for example, on corn, my plan this year calls for, well, I had been testing this sulfur product they have. It's called XR5 sulfur. And we've been spraying it at like V5, V6 with my early fungicide. Problem is, I'm putting all the sulfur on with my corn planter. I'm not short sulfur then. That's not when I need it. I need it late season. And so this year we're going to put some on late season, some sulfur at that VT R3 stage, maybe even a late shot at R5, R6. We'll see. That's kind of the plan. So we'll see. And I'm going to use some on beans as well, and wheat for that matter. But yeah, that late season sulfur is, I think, more beneficial to us. So that's how we're going to try and do it. All right, what else? Enjoyed this. Thank you. Did you guys enjoy this? Oh, one thing. So we're going to keep doing these. They will get better. I promise. This is the first one. We're just trying it. But I fully expected some people to, well, I don't know. Anyway, if the whole like and subscribe, please do that. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. If you really, really, really want to support my channel, the absolute best way you can do it, in addition to watching the videos, is, let me show you. Let me just show you. Head on over here to farmfocus.com. Go farmfocus.com/borderviewfarms. Check out my merchandise. Grab yourself a t-shirt, a hoodie, a sticker, whatever it is. I know this stuff's not super cheap. I know their shipping is expensive. Buy some stuff from some other brands so you can get over $99 and get free shipping. This is no doubt the best way to support me. That is, if you want to, financially support my channel and a great company in Farm Focus, this is without a doubt the best way to do it. Super chats on YouTube are great. I appreciate them. YouTube's taking 40% of that, or 45%, guys. Like, thanks, but this is a better way. More of your money is getting to where you want it to go by using Farm Focus. Grabbing some merch would appreciate that. So anyway, there's my push. We'll go back to me here and back to your questions. All right. Is there a way to create a field names in Op Center without drawing a field? Ooh, good question. I don't know. I think so. Let's see. Setup. Land. Setup. Land. I would assume you hit this add button. Add a field. Yeah. Select a client, select a farm, add a field name. Absolutely, that's how you do it right there. I'm not going to do that because I don't need to, but yes. Okay, what else do we got? What about the direction you plant? What makes you decide to go north-south, 3 degrees off of north or whatever? What makes you choose? Efficient with the equipment, weather, what makes you decide? Yeah, every field is kind of different. I've heard guys talk about, you know, trying to plant east and west because you capture more sunlight that way. I don't know if that's true or not. I suppose it's possible, but in reality, we're farming fields based on efficiency. Which way is the most efficient? Take this field right here that we just did. We're going north and south because the road is here. We have to park trucks here in the fall to get the grain out of the field. Like, it makes no sense to farm this one east-west across the rows and then have to cart everything from the back clear to the front. Not going to do that, okay? But like this field here, this is around my seed warehouse. We farm that one east-west because that's what makes sense. Same thing here. This one here, we go east-west because that's what makes sense. Now this one, we should go east and west, and we used to, but I decided to put my test plots there. Well, it made more sense for me to do test plots north and south, so that's how they get planted. It totally is dependent on the field, how it lays, what the longest direction of the rows are, and where the roads are. That's how we decide. All right. How much do you make prescriptions for wheat as you put on as much energy on your wheat? Do you put as much energy on your wheat? We do not do any scripts for wheat. I could make nitrogen scripts for wheat, but I haven't figured out how to do that. That's a hard thing to figure out, and so I am not doing that. Yeah, we're just not. So no, I probably need to put more effort into wheat than I do. I don't do a great job with wheat, but we don't grow as much wheat. Corn and beans are kind of, they're the focus as much as maybe they shouldn't be. That's how it is. So anyway, storms, it got windy last night. I haven't driven around to see if there's any trees down. Nothing too much around here, at least locally. Any tools or tips for making spreadsheet that you used? That spreadsheet is an evolution over 10 years. Like, I started 10 years ago just as a way to know what varieties I was going to plant where. Like, I've put a lot of time and effort into that. Every year it gets a little bit better. I made some major changes this year to it. So all I can say is, you know, start somewhere. This page right here was the easy one. There's another column I hid. That's the farm name, field, acres, crop, planting rate. You know, put the information that you need in there and go from there. There's some totals columns that I hid because you guys don't need to know totals. And that kind of stuff, and you can do it, and then just kind of evolves over time. You know, I've got this starter page that came about because I was trying to figure out what to put in my starter. How do I know how much nutrients I'm getting? Well, I can create a spreadsheet that'll tell me that. So at the top of this, I have all the different products up here and their analysis. How much nitrogen, how much potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, zinc, all of that stuff. But then that complicates things because those are based on weight, not volume. So a gallon of 1034O isn't the same as a gallon of 28, and so you have to have the densities in there. You have to know this stuff in order to really evaluate how much nutrients you're getting out of a gallon of 1034O or a gallon of 28. And yeah, I don't have any tips other than start small. Start with the basic information that you need and work your way up from there. As you need something else, build it. Just do it. But you're going to have some time into it. Have you ever thought about doing controlled traffic in the fields? Well, I mean, kind of. So we kind of do controlled traffic, right? We've been running 40-foot planters. We've been running 40-foot bean heads, 20-foot on our corn head, which matches up slowly, 120-foot on the planter. So we're kind of there. We're actually getting away from it a little bit with the way that I'm going to do the anhydrous and the 60-foot planter this year and other stuff. Controlled traffic is very hard to do. Now, that said, we try and minimize our running around. You don't want to be driving across fields just going wherever, but you still got to get the work done. So, yeah. Hoping this early rain equals more groundwater during July and August. I am ready for it to stop raining. We've had plenty. I would like to be planting corn in 2 weeks. I would be planting beans tomorrow if it was dry enough. I can't get in the fields because it's too wet. All right, guys. I think we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thanks for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any you have any questions, comments, anything like that, let me know, and we will try and get them answered for you. I did post a video this morning. If you haven't seen that one yet, go check it out. And we'll be back at it on Monday. I don't know what we got going on next week. I got some more beans to treat. We're going to start with that probably Monday morning. I'm hoping for a good day weather-wise where we can get a bunch of stuff delivered. That would be awesome. And then Dad's got he wants to start getting nitrogen put on the wheat next week, which, depending on rainfall, we'll see. We're up to 0.95 for yesterday and today, so the anhydrous is 15 rows set for 16 rows. 16 times 4 is 48. No, 16 times 3 is 48, but watch this morning's video, you'll understand. Did you end up buying a dry spreader? Not yet. Something we're thinking about. I haven't done it yet. So, all right, guys, we'll do another one of these probably sometime towards the end of April. I'll do more live streams in between then, but the Agronomy live stuff, I'm going to try and, I don't know. Let me know what you thought, what you want to see, that kind of stuff. So we will see you guys later. Thanks.